So our final speaker for this session is a data scientist and machine learning engineer of the Remote Sensing and Data Science Help Desk, or DATOS. He is an MS Engineering, Energy Engineering, and BS Computer Engineering graduate from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His area of specialization is the integration of artificial intelligence and computer vision technologies on Earth observation data. So everyone, please welcome Engineer John Keithley Difuntorum. Engineer John?
Yes, good morning po. Nakita niyo po yung slides?
Yes, we can see and hear you quite well.
Okay. Good morning everyone. I'm John Keithley Difuntorum. Siguro, pasensya na kasi I'll be speaking in Taglish kasi I'm more comfortable speaking in Taglish. So, yeah. Basically, I'm John Keithley Difuntorum, a researcher from the DOST-ASTI, or the Department of Science and Technology, Advanced Science and Technology Institute, and I will be talking our current efforts with regards to artificial intelligence and satellite imagery for disaster risk reduction during these times of the new normal. So yun. Siguro a brief background lang nung DOST-ASTI. Well, DOST-ASTI is a research and development institute of the Department of Science and Technology established in 1987. We have the mandate to undertake scientific research and development activities in support of advancing information and communication technology, computing, and microelectronics. During the recent years, actually, we have ventured into space technology and artificial intelligence. I guess yung madalas na tinatanong sa amin kapag ganitong presentation is, why is the Philippines, a third world country, actually venturing into space technology? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. Pero yung main reason isa sa mga main reasons na sinasabi namin is for disaster risk reduction and preparedness. Basically, the Philippines is in the Pacific Ring of Fire, and as a country na beset by countless calamities, madalas tayong bagyuhin, madalas magkalindol dito, we should strengthen our disaster risk reduction efforts and disaster risk monitoring efforts. And how will we be able to do that? Well, first, kailangan natin na magkaroon ng timely na assessment sa magiging damage kapag magkaroon ng kalamidad. And for us to have that, we have to have a quote-unquote eye in space. And recently, we have ventured into space technology through the Philippine Microsat project. We have launched 4 satellites, 3 satellites, Diwata 1, Diwata 2, and Maya 1 satellites. And this helps us monitor the situation pagkatapos ng isang kalamidad. So, yun, it's one of the reasons why we're actually venturing into space technology, to monitor the situation after a calamity or disaster has struck. Okay, so it's one thing na magkaroon tayo ng base data for analysis ng situation at hand. It's another to actually produce pertinent or relevant maps na magagamit ng ating mga officials in assessing the situation. And actually, satellite images are a very hard thing to process. They can be considered as big data. So what we actually employed in ASTI what we actually did is to train an artificial intelligence to provide this map generation for us, to provide this processing for us, so that we can provide rapid and timely map generation during times of disaster and monitoring. And also, yung sa mga problema dito sa bansa natin sa Pilipinas is yung unavailability of maps for inventory, which means that apparently, kakalaman na namin ito, wala actually tayong inventory ng mga high-valued crops dito sa Pilipinas. So for this example, for the coconut trees, wala actually tayong inventory ng mga bilang ng coconut trees. So kung magkaroon ng kalamidad or kung magkaroon ng disaster, wala tayong matinong assessment kung ilan yung magiging damage in terms of pesos or kung ilan yung crops na nasira. So isa rin itong justification on why we're venturing into space technology to properly make a map of inventory of high-valued crops for the Philippines. So now that I presented yung mga justifications for space technology and artificial intelligence, papakita ko naman yung parang workflow namin on doing this methodologies. So I think most of us are familiar of this workflow for object detection ng artificial intelligence. We have the data pre-processing, we have the training data preparation, we have the neural network training, and we have the validation assessment. Data pre-processing, this is where our remote sensing experts actually come in. They perform radiometric corrections, SAR calibrations, and geometric corrections. What I would actually want to highlight is the training data preparation. I think this topic can be involved in the AI and ethics part na subject kasi this training data preparation, yung normally na ginagawa for producing a prototype of a neural network model is transfer learning, in which we are actually using models na highly trained na in good condition na, and apply it to our own applications. However, what we found out, specifically with remote sensing data or with satellite images, yung mga datasets na nakuha namin, yung mga models na nakita namin, are actually very biased towards the first world countries. Case in point is yung SpaceNet na dataset. If we're familiar with that dataset, it's a collection of remote sensing and satellite images na digitized for neural network applications. However, that dataset is highly biased towards the US setting. So yung mga bahay doon, yung mga kabahayan, yung mga buildings na na-digitize doon for training are actually very organized, quote-unquote organized, for lack of a better term. We can't really use that here sa Philippine setting kasi take the case of Manila. Medyo yung mga kabahayan natin dito is medyo magkakadikit, and there are a lot of profiles for buildings like shanties and the like. So what we did is to actually develop our own dataset. We actually localized the dataset, and kami na mismo yung gumagawa ng dataset. So this is actually the pinakamatagal na part sa pag-develop namin ng isang prototype ng AI model. And the rest actually follows the standard protocols for training a neural network. So the next one is neural network training, in which the programmer actually does the parameter tuning and hyperparameter tuning. And yung output nito, binabalik namin sa remote sensing specialist para ma-check niya kung tama ba yung naging output ng neural network model through Jaccard index and statistical analysis. So, siguro before I discuss the applications na mga na-develop namin, let me give you a brief summary ng mga AI models na na-develop namin. We actually have AI models categorized into 4 categories depending sa ginagamit na satellite images ng mga models na to. The first one uses VHR images. I think what we're usually using is digital globe images, yung same na ginagamit ng Google Earth. And it has a 0.3 meter resolution. When I say it has a 0.3 meter resolution, it means na sa isang pixel ng image, yung katumbas niya on ground or yung ground sampling distance niya is 0.3 meters. So this is a very fine resolution image. And as such, kaya nating mag-detect ng mga individual na puno, like individual na mango trees, individual na coconut trees, pili trees, buildings, and damaged buildings. So ito yung ginagamit namin mostly for inventory ng mga highly valued crops. Yung next naman is we're using planet imagery or planet satellite images, which has a 3 meter resolution. So this is much coarser than the VHR images. And since this is a much coarser image, we can technically expect it to detect yung mga individual trees or yung mga individual na kabahayan or individual na mga buildings. So what we actually develop here is more generalized models for the land cover classification. So yung mga mango trees, coconut trees, pili trees, and other types of foliage, we actually classified it into just one, which is vegetation. And then the buildings and other man-made structures, we classified it as built-up areas. So mas nagiging generalized yung classification ng mga AI models namin as the imagery resolution becomes coarser. So you might ask, ano yung kahalagahan why we are training yung much coarser models than the VHR models? Well, first things first, if we're going to be honest, VHR images actually cost a lot. Sa isang fresh capture ng satellite ng digital globe na image, it actually costs 1 million for just one capture of a satellite, as composed to planet images, which ranges from, I don't know the exact figures, pero ballpark, I think it ranges from 50,000 pesos and above for a single image. And you can see the difference kung gaano kalaki yung makukuha nating matitipid natin if we're going to use planet images kung yung analysis naman natin is somewhat macro or macro perspective. And pagdahan with planet imagery is yung revisit time ng satellite sa Pilipinas is twice a day. So we can have 2 fresh captures at different times per day sa planet images. Yung next type of imagery is the Landsat image. This is a much coarser image than the planet image, and it has a 30-meter resolution. So medyo very coarse na talaga itong Landsat images. And again, mas generalized na rin yung classification na ginagamit namin dito. We develop models for built-up areas, water bodies, vegetation, clouds and shadows, and bare soil. So you might ask, ano yung bentahe ng Landsat images as compared to the previous satellite images? Well, Landsat images, yung talagang bentahe niya sa amin is it's free. So USGS, the one that produces the one that captures the Landsat images, actually has a website that you can download freely yung mga Landsat images. And yung Landsat images, if I'm not mistaken, has a revisit time of every 12 days. So every 12 days, magkakaroon tayo ng fresh capture ng Pilipinas. So, and it's free. So yun, pwede magamit ng mga researchers for their various undertakings. Another advantage of using Landsat imagery is actually Landsat images, kahit na yung spatial resolution niya mas mababa as compared to the first 2 images, mas mataas naman yung spectral resolution niya. When I say spectral resolution, the first 2 images can sense RGB near, the red, green, blue, and the near band and the electronic wavelength. So yung visible to the naked eye plus the near band, yung nasa-sense ng VHR images and planet imagery. However, Landsat images, mas mataas yung sensitivity niya sa electromagnetic wavelength. And if I'm not mistaken, yung mga bands na nasa-sense niya is coastal aerosol, the blue, green, red bands, the near infrared band, the short wavelength infrared, panchromatic cirrus, and the long wavelength infrared band. So mas maraming parts na electromagnetic wavelength yung nasa-sense noong Landsat imagery. And for that, mas maraming analysis yung pwede nating makuha sa Landsat images. And I guess some of these analyses include yung urban heat index detection and vegetation health index na makukuha natin from Landsat images. These 3 images are what we considered optical images. So yung makikita natin, yung mga capture natin dito can be modeled as what yung nakita ng ating mata. However, the final image is a synthetic aperture radar image. So ito, hindi siya true color. Ibig sabihin, yung nakikita ng mata natin is not exactly kung ano yung dinidisplay ng satellite image. Because this satellite actually emits its own radio waves. Tapos yung quote-unquote backscatter na nasa-sense niya pagbalik nung in-emit niya na radio waves, yun yung dinidisplay ng image na to. And for that, medyo mas mahirap siyang i-analyze or i-view from a non-remote sensing perspective kasi hindi siya tulad na nakikita ng naked eye na RGB image. Pero it has its advantages, most specifically during times of disaster. The first 3 optical images, pag magkaroon ng bagyo, pihado na yung makaka-capture niyang image is cloudy, as in punong-puno ng clouds. Wala kang makikita dun sa ilalim noong clouds na yun. And for that, since wala kang makikita dun sa ilalim ng clouds, hindi mo malalaman, hindi mo ma-assess kung ano yung situation on ground. And pero with SAR images, you won't have that same problem because SAR images are actually cloud penetrating. So ito yung ginagamit namin mostly for our disaster risk reduction efforts. And ito yung aming source satellite image for developing our flood maps. So this synthetic aperture radar has a 15-meter resolution, ground sampling distance. And we have developed 4 models for it, which is the flood maps, fish pen, fish ponds, and ships. Okay. So now that I have discussed yung mga images na ginagamit namin and yung mga appropriate na models na involved in these images, let me discuss to you naman yung mga applications na dinevelop namin for this. Okay, yung first na application na na-develop namin is yung flood extent mapping namin na dinevelop. Ito actually yung pinaka binibigay namin, ito yung nire-release namin, yung madalas namin gawin. Kasi every time na magkakaroon ng calamity, ng typhoon event or ng bagyo, we always produce flood maps para dun sa mga lugar or sa mga locations na matatamaan ng bagyo. And ito, it's given, we give this freely sa kahit sino man manghingi. Pero mostly we give it to the Office of the Civil Defense and the pertinent LGUs na may tatamaan na tinamaan ng bagyo. So what this map displays is actually the flood extent, kung gaano ka laki or kung gaano ka wide-ranging yung baha doon sa lugar na tinamaan ng bagyo. I guess since we're on the topic of AI and ethics, the one challenge that we have in producing these flood maps is actually the validation of these flood maps, because yung typical na validation kapag anything involving remote sensing and earth observation data is you have to validate your data on ground sa mismong nangyari. And for our case, we can't possibly expect our people na puntahan yung mismong baha during the time of calamity. Kasi, well, first things first, it's dangerous. Next, it's costly. And of course, we can't convince any people na pumunta dun sa mismong baha at times like this. So that's one of the ethical considerations that we considered in validating our models. So what we did is actually to validate our model into an optical image na freshly captured after nung baha. Of course, that process is actually based on luck kasi mostly kapag magka-capture ka ng optical image, gaya ng nasabi ko kanina, after ng baha, puro clouds yan. So luckily, meron kaming isang lugar, I think it's in, if I remember correctly, it's in Biliran, Samar, or it's in Pangasinan, I'm not sure. Pero nung time na kinapture namin siya, as in walang clouds after nung baha. So we were able to validate our model na, okay, may existing pala na flood, may existing pala na flooding talaga dun sa area. Okay, meron pala talagang baha doon sa area na to and so forth. Pero again, that's purely luck-based, and that is not how standard operating protocols of validating a remote sensing model occurs. Kasi dapat talaga kapag validation of satellite imagery of remote sensing and any observation data for that matter, kailangan magpuntahan sa ground for validation. Okay, this is an example of the North Luzon flood extent map na dinevelop namin. If I recall correctly, this is Typhoon Kamuri, circa 2018. Yeah, it's Typhoon Kamuri, circa 2018. And this data, yung input image namin dito, actually ranges for about, give or take, 100 gigabyte. Yeah, so it can be considered as big data. Thankfully, we were able to optimize our processing na matatapos niya yung pag-detect ng flooding extent dito sa area na to in a matter of 2 to 4 hours. So that we can provide timely data dun sa mga LGUs and OCD and OCD na involved dun sa pag-assess ng situation on ground. So, yun. The next AI model that we developed is the road network prediction model. This is actually in collaboration with Project Dan, but I'll be discussing that later. Basically, yung nakikita niyong video dito, yung GIF na nakita niyo dito is yung progression ng training namin as we added more training data and as we improved the architecture of our model. So this is a planet dove image with a 3-meter resolution. And so ito yung progression ng model namin actually for detecting the road network. So like I said, this is being used in collaboration with Project Dime. If you're familiar with the Build project of the government, in which Project Dime is actually the monitoring component of Department of Budget and Management. Sila yung nag-monitor kung meron ba talaga nangyayaring road construction projects or building construction projects dun sa Build project. So if you can see in this slide, nakita natin yung dalawang blue lines. It's actually the start and end point of the particular road na dinadevelop. And yung project time is tasked to monitor kung meron ba talagang road building na nangyayari. So in this case, meron naman, nakikita naman natin yung progression from May 26 to August 12. Meron naman nakikita ng road dyan. So the road network algorithm that we developed is being used by Project Dime for these types of situations para hindi na nila kailangan puntahan on ground. Monitor na lang nila using satellite images yung progression ng road construction projects. The next model that we developed is built-up identification, or built-up meaning any man-made structure. This one is a satellite image of Baguio City, and we detected yung mga built-up areas dito sa lugar na to. So ito yung built-up areas dito sa lugar na to. I guess another ethical consideration that arises nung dine-develop namin itong model na to is yung aming bias towards built-up areas. What do I mean by that? Kasi admittedly we are in the subject of disaster risk reduction. We are disaster risk reduction researchers. So ang ginagawa namin is meron kaming land cover, and yung built-up areas are actually confused with bare soil areas. And ang ginagawa namin is binababaan namin yung threshold para maklasify niya as built-up areas. So for example, yung built-up area na kung nakikita niyo yung mouse ko, kunyari, itong built-up area na nandito, yung mga yellow dito, mostly nakaklasify siya ng, as bare soil. Sabihin natin na yung detection score for built-up nito is nasa 40%. However, siniset na namin yung threshold into 40% para maklasify siya as built-up. You might ask, why are we doing that? Because we would want na maklasify siya as bare, so as built up, and kung sakaling magkaroon ng calamity event dun sa area, naklasify siya as built up. So dahil naklasify siya as built up, we would assume na merong human activity or human presence dun sa lugar na yun, and we would adjust our measures accordingly dahil may human activity dun sa area, dahil may human presence dun sa area. We would adjust our disaster response methods accordingly. As opposed to pag na-classify siya as bare soil, kapag nagkaroon ng disaster, hindi siya papakialaman kasi bare soil lang naman siya. Wala namang ibang feature dun. Wala namang human activity dun. So parang ganun. So I guess para mas ma-highlight yung point na sinabi ko is case in point, this is in Naga, Cebu landslide during, I think this is on September 2018, September 20, 2018, nagkaroon ng landslide sa Naga, Cebu. So what we did was we procured a planet imagery before the event happened. So ito yung itsura niya before the event happened. And we used our AI model, the AI built-up model, to predict yung mga built-up areas dito sa lugar na to. So ito yung extent ng landslide, by the way, yung blue na area. And ito yung mga na-predict naming built-up models. Back then, circa 2018, we don't know. Hindi pa namin alam yung ginagawa at hindi pa ganun ka-accurate yung built-up detection model namin. So if you can see yung mga kabahayan na to, mostly nakaklasify siya as built-up. Although mataas rin yung, nakaklasify siya as bare soil. Although ito yung mga kabahayan na to. Although naka-classify din siya ng built up, medyo relatively mataas din, nasa 55 or 53%. Pero yung threshold namin back then, I think was 80 or 90% para ma-classify siya as built up. So yung mga build up detection namin dito sa area medyo konti lang. And we agreed as a team na hindi, kailangan nating i-set yung mga naka-classify niya as built up into the built up into really built up. We force classify them into built up, and as such we digitize na lang namin yung mga ibang errors na tingin namin ay built up. So ito yung mga nakita naming built up errors around the area, and so nung nagkaroon ng landslide, we overlaid yung mga built up detection doon sa area, and this one is the built up detection, and we sent this map to the search and retrieval operation, to the ground zero team na nag-operate doon sa area na yon, para alam nila yung coordinates kung saan magsisimulang maghukay. So this one was sent to the ground zero command post ng search and retrieval operation ng team, and right then and there, alam nila kung saan coordinates mag-start maghukay for human presence. And I guess, looking back, that decision that we made back then to classify yung mga potential built-up areas as built-up areas, we force classify them as built-up areas, might have saved lives. Kasi doon na alam na nung team dun sa ground zero command post where to start digging, kumbaga. So these are some pictures of the maps being used in action by the responders. Ito din yung sa mga landslide na nangyari naman sa Itogon, Benguet. Same scenario, pero in this time, mas okay na yung aming built-up detection. Mas maganda yung accuracy niya. And as you can see, yung sa yellow line, may natamaang bahay. So again, we sent it to the appropriate authorities, Office of Civil Defense and UST regional offices, para makatulong dun sa search and retrieval operation during the landslide. Ito naman, special case kasi hindi namin alam yung extent ng landslide, kung saan talaga yung mismong landslide. Alam nga namin through social media, nabalitaan namin na mayroong nangyaring landslide sa Makilala, Cotabato, but we don't know exactly where it is. So what we did was we procured a satellite image before the landslide happened and after the landslide happened, and then we detected yung land cover classification ng before image and detected yung land cover classification ng after image. And then tinignan namin kung saan nagkaroon ng change. So in this case, yung mga highlighted ng red, yung mga areas highlighted ng red is actually kung saan nagkaroon ng change from vegetation to bare soil. So yung that change from vegetation to bare soil can actually mean a lot of things. Pero in this case, we assumed that it means dito nangyari yung landslide. Kasi from yung vegetated area, natabunan ng bare land. So it might mean na dito nangyari yung landslide. The next AI model that we developed, this is actually quite controversial. This is actually a damage detection. We're separating yung mga damaged buildings with yung mga buildings na medyo okay pa. And I said it was controversial kasi yung ginamit namin dataset dito is yung Marawi Siege dataset, yung during the time of war. So yun yung ginamit namin pang train for a model to detect the damaged buildings in the area. I guess hindi naman malicious yung intent kasi we are planning to detect yung mga damaged buildings, and this actually we have ongoing talks with the SWD to apply this AI model in times of calamity naman para ma-assess nila yung damage kapag after the calamity, kung gaano kadaming bahay yung nasira, for example. Pero I guess this has implications ethically. If you're familiar with Project Maven, it's a collaboration between Pentagon and Google. Let me do a quick Google search. This project is This project aims to develop and integrate computer vision algorithms needed to help military and civilian analysts encumbered by the sheer volume of full motion video data that DoD collects every day in support of counterinsurgency and terrorism operations. So basically, they want to deploy artificial intelligence and machine learning to circumvent the counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations of the Pentagon. Of course, many Google employees cried foul because they thought that it was a way of Pentagon of the way of Pentagon of to weaponize AI. I think that resolution is actually quite valid because yung plano ng Pentagon to pursue artificial intelligence might have some malicious underpinnings in the sense that they could refine drone strikes and other kinds of lethal attacks involved in the business of war. So, ayun, it has some serious ethical complications when it comes to satellite imagery and artificial intelligence. Pero full disclosure, wala naman kaming ginagawang malicious in the datasets that we use as training data. Okay, so, ayun. So this one naman is what we did during the time of the pandemic. This is one of our COVID efforts. Basically, what we did here is we monitored the presence of ships sa Manila Port area using object detection. This is using SAR imagery. And basically, nalalaman namin kung ilan yung mga number of ships present doon sa particular na dates na nandun sa lugar, particular date and time dun sa lugar na yan. And if you'll see dun sa chart dun sa left, yung months, makita natin, you can see a spike or an increase in the number of ships, ship count doon sa Manila Port area as compared to the 2019 data, yung dotted line. Don't be alarmed, hindi siya indication of business as usual operations ng maritime industry. It's actually quite good na madaming ships doon sa port area kasi it means that the community quarantine is in effect. Kasi what we found out is that kaya madaming ships doon sa area na yun during the community quarantine or ECQ, MECQ, GCQ is because stranded sila, hindi sila nakabiyahe. Because of the community quarantine taking into effect. So it's actually a good thing na may presence ng ships in sa area kasi ibig sabihin, they are not seafaring, di sila bumabiyahe. Kumaga. So, the ship detection AI model also has some ethical considerations in terms of the West Philippine Sea dispute kasi this can be used to detect the presence of maritime vessels and shipping vessels na umaaligid doon sa disputed territories. And well, that's I think I'm not at liberty to speak for that matter. So let's move on to agriculture, to the agricultural sector maps. And this one is the AI model that we developed for detecting the fishing industry. So we have developed models for fish ponds, fish cages, and fish pens. This is in collaboration with the Philippine Statistics Authority. Sila yung partner namin. Sila yung nagbibigay sa amin ng locations ng mga fish ponds, fish cages, and fish pens for it to be used as training data dun sa aming mga models. If you can see sa images, ang ginamit namin dito is yung synthetic aperture radar ng satellite images. Kasi that's one of the limitations of optical imagery actually. Kaya hindi namin siya ginamit is yung mga fish pens, fish cages, and fish ponds. Pag tinignan niyo siya sa Google Earth, pag tinignan niyo siya, nakikita niyo na nagbe-blend doon sa kulay ng tubig yung mga fish pens and fish cages and fish ponds. Kaya hindi siya madaling ma-identify. Kaya yung ginamit namin for this particular application is actually the synthetic aperture radar imagery. Ayun. So, this is in collaboration with PSA and ito yung mga initial results namin. This is in Laguna Lake. Yeah, this is the detected fish bin sa Laguna Lake. And ito naman ay using COMSAT 5. The first, this one is using Sentinel-1 SAR imagery. This is using COMSAT 5. As you can see, for detecting fish ponds, as you can see, hindi pa siya ganun kaayos kasi merong misclassification ng fish ponds doon sa mga river areas, tributaries. And I guess this is still a work in progress. Yeah, hindi ko lang kung saan area to, pero yeah, it's still a work in progress. The next one, ito is mas comprehensive na inventory ng fishing industry sa Bolinao, Pangasinan. Ito yun na yung combined na fish traps, fish ponds, and fish pens. This is using Novasar data, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, this is Novasar data. Fun fact, Novasar data is partially owned by our country, with the Philippines. So, meron tayong satellite na we can task to capture images for the particular purpose of inventory. And ito naman is ito naman yung mga maps na using using optical imagery, and this one is using digital globe images and world view images. So it's a very high resolution imagery with 0.5 meter resolution. So yung ginawa namin dito is prototype dito is actually hindi namin alam kung gaano ka-effective yung magiging success rate nung coconut tree na model namin. So what we did was we developed a prototype. Meron kami isang full-scale satellite image, tapos hinati namin sa dalawa. The first one, din-digitize namin yung mango trees dun sa, coconut trees dun sa image, and the second one is left as yung, dun namin ipipredict yung mga coconut trees using the trained na model. So ito yung video. So this one is yung training data namin na dinitize. Tapos ito naman yung detected na coconut trees namin. So I guess the detection is medyo promising naman naging prototype namin for this one. Actually, this is an old model. Ang ginagawa namin ngayon para mas mapabilis yung pag-generate ng training data is hindi na namin din-digitize yung exact na shape ng coconut trees. Binibilugan na lang namin siya. Kasi upon consultation with the domain experts, with the industry experts, hindi na nila kailangan ng exact shape ng coconut tree. What they just want to know is kung saan located yung coconut trees at kung ilan yung gila niya. So, mas madali para sa amin na gumawa ng training data pag bibilugan na lang yung mga coconut trees. Ayan. So, this is a repeated slide. Ayan. Ito naman ay AI for mango tree detection. This was actually quite a challenge for us, and we actually partnered with BPSU, Bataan Peninsula State University, for this one. Kasi, to be quite honest, hindi namin alam kung paano i-separate yung mango tree with other fruit-bearing trees and with other trees in general. So we coordinated with them, and they provided us with some insight on how to locate yung mga mango trees. Apparently, mango trees mukha siyang broccoli when seen from space, when seen from above. And they also provided us with yung mga locations, geolocations ng mga mango trees that we can use for training our AI models. Yeah. Okay, so some ethical considerations dun sa agricultural maps. I guess yung na-raise din kanina to ni Dr. Tapang na where does AI cross from monitoring to surveillance? Kasi to be quite honest, when you have an eye in space, there's no more room for privacy. Nakikita natin lahat yung naging activity on ground, whether it's a protected property or a private property or whatnot. So I guess this same question applies. Where do we transition from simply monitoring the situation to actually surveillance, to actually having surveillance operations applied on the particular area in question? Okay, so the next part is the next CA model that we developed is land cover or change detection models. So ito, merong satellite imagery, tapos ang ginagawa lang niya is, dinedetect niya, kinaklasify niya yung mga areas ng satellite image into its land cover classes, specific land cover classes. This is a satellite image of Cotabato City na ginawa namin ng land cover classification, and we classified it into bare land, agricultural land, low density vegetation, high density vegetation, water, shadows, urban, and clouds. This AI model is in collaboration with NAMRIA, the mandated mapping authority of the Philippines. And yung proposed na stakeholder for this one is actually mga LGUs, kasi they will be using this one for their comprehensive land use plan or for planning purposes, CLUP. Yun. And ito naman is yung land cover for a higher resolution na satellite image. The first one is using Landsat 8 image with a 13-meter resolution. Ito mas masinsin. This is using planet imagery with a 3-meter resolution. And dahil mas masinsin siya, nilagay namin yung road network detection, road network AI model namin. Sinama namin siya dun sa land cover models namin para mas comprehensive yung kanyang land cover detection. Okay, so ito naman, ang ginawa namin dito is, this is in partnership with UP Planades. Ito, dinetect namin yung mga, since meron kaming inventory ng satellite images dating back until, if I'm not mistaken, 2010, meron kaming inventory ng satellite images from 2010 up to now. We detected yung mga built-up areas, this is in Davao City, noong 2013. And then we detected yung mga built-up areas noong 2016. And then we overlaid them on top of each other para makita namin kung gaano lumalago yung mga built-up areas as the years progress. So since alam natin yung mga built-up areas, alam natin kung saan nagkakaroon ng construction or building construction, mamamodel natin yung quote-unquote urban sprawl ng built-up areas as the years progresses. So, some ethical considerations with land cover. I think na-mention ko na rin partly kanina, pero pag nagkaroon kasi ng change detection, for example, in this part, yung mga vegetated areas, pag nagkaroon dyan ng, yung nag-transition from vegetated, kunyari, nung March, nagkaroon siya ng vegetated pa siya, tapos June, naging bare land siya. This can mean two things. First is, of course, magkaroon ng natural calamity like landslides and other hazards. The second one is something more malicious, na nagkaroon ng human activity dun sa area. It might mean na nagkaroon ng illegal logging dun sa area and other illegal activities na ginagawa, or mining, for example. There are also some ethical considerations with regards to counterinsurgency, kasi yung transition from vegetation to bare land can mean na meron din human activity doon sa area. So it can mean na nagkakaroon ng human settlement dun sa bundok. So it might indicate the presence of rebel factions doon, presence of rebel faction establishments doon sa areas na nagkaroon ng change detection. And again, ethically, if you're going to use the maps to triangulate the locations of the rebel, you're actually one of the reasons why war can be incited between the rebels and the soldiers or whatnot. So, yeah. This one, I'll just breeze through this other applications. Ito naman, they're using classical machine learning techniques and methodologies. Ito is mapping of other high-valued crops like rice, sugarcane, and corn. This is using dynamic time warping techniques. Basically, kinuha namin yung phenological signature ng mga crops. Tapos, kino-compare namin siya dun sa temporal signature niya across across many satellite images to detect kung saan yung mga areas for rice, sugarcane, and corn. And this is in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture and Ito naman is drought monitoring. Ito, ginawa namin siya nung nagkaroon ng kakulangan ng tubig. If you remember, noong 2019, yung walang tubig, yung halos mag-critical level yung Angat Dam, to monitor yung situation nung drought situation natin. And this one, we modeled yung VHI, Vegetation Health Index, dun sa lugar para ma-monitor namin yung severity ng drought. Vegetation Health Index is an indicative data that pertains to kung mayroong presence ng heat and drought dun sa area. Ito ay using SAR data, ma-model natin yung surface movement. Ito, makikita natin na mayroong paglubog doon sa area. I mean, merong displacement, medyo lumulubog yung area. This is I think, in Cebu. I'm not sure which area in Cebu. Pero makikita natin yung paglubog ng area from 2016 to 2018. Ito is our monitoring efforts dun sa Taal Volcano eruption. Ito naman, minomonitor namin yung paggalaw ng lupa doon sa area around Taal Volcano kasi it might mean the motion of the area around Taal Volcano might mean volcanic activity, yung malapit na siyang pumutok. So it's using interferogram methods on SAR images. Ito naman is yung NDVI. This is an indicative data. Again, this is for Taal Volcano monitoring. Ito yung pag-model namin ng ashfall dun sa area. Kapag nagkaroon ng drastic change sa NDVI or normalized difference vegetation index dun sa area malapit sa Taal, it might mean na natakpan ng ashfall yung area around that. So that's an indicative measure of malapit na pumutok ng Taal Volcano or a measure of kung gaano kalaki yung ashfall na kumakalat from the Taal Volcano eruption. Okay, in summary, this is yung mga efforts na AI mapping efforts na dinevelop namin. It can be classified into 5 thematic areas: infrastructure monitoring, food security, security and defense, and disaster risk reduction and climate change assessment. The ones in blue are ones that we have memorandum of agreements. The ones in purple are the ones that we give freely kapag may nanghingi sa amin, we freely give it to them. And the ones in black are actually ones that we have existing or ongoing talks para sa continuous development in the future. And with that, I'll be ending my report. And if you have questions, feel free to email us or ask after the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And good day.
Thank you. Hello? Something wrong with my audio now. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Am I coming in loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So thank you very much, Engineer John, for your great presentation on the use of large-scale AI models for disaster risk reduction, agriculture, fisheries, maritime monitoring of ships, disaster mapping for floods, land cover mapping, and many, many others using data from our Philippine-made satellites.